peaches. Before we ate, everybody linked arms for another prayer, and part of me wished the ritual would never end, because then we'd need to choke down the food. A heavy silence fell over the room, then those cries started up again. Closer than before. It sounded like a child, and their voice had a panicky quality. If it wasn't for the threat of another glare from Thomas's mom, I would have peeked. As the prayer dragged on, the crying became more hysterical, until finally something rattled against the wall behind me. Mr. Donovan's voice raised, thunderous now, and drowned out the sound. I'm not sure which scared me more, but either way my arms broke out in goosebumps. The sermon ended 5 minutes later, and we sat there in silence until the head of the table said, "Amen." I checked the corners for sobbing children, finding only more sheets. What then? A CD player? My imagination? The uncooked chicken made me gag. I didn't want to cause trouble, so I picked around the moldy peaches and spread out the plate so it looked like I'd eaten more than I actually had. There was chocolate cake for dessert, but Thomas's mom went around slicing a piece onto each of our plates, which were still covered with chicken and gravy. By that point my stomach was growling, so I scoffed down a top layer of cake which hadn't touched anything else. I wanted to leave. Faking a bellyache, I asked if they would call my mom and have her come pick me up. Thomas's dad raised an eyebrow. No need, we have a special remedy. He told the rest of the family to pray for my health and led me out of the room. The front door was on my left, and I briefly considered making a run for it, but the second I did, Mr. Donovan's hand clamped around my shoulder, tight. His smile never wavered, but something about his eyes made me break out in goosebumps. Like an implied threat. So, I let him guide me into a vintage bathroom. There was a covered cabinet above the sink and the tub was already full. A thick layer of scud, plus a few dead flies, floated along the surface. Mr. Donovan poured something into the murky water, salt maybe? And ordered me to strip off my t-shirt so I could dip my midsection in. I told him I'd made a miraculous recovery. Ah, the power of prayer, he said, grinning so wide I could count the back teeth. After that he announced it was time for bed, despite the fact it wasn't even dark yet. Upstairs, at the very far end of the hall, a huge object spanning the width of both walls was covered by another sheet. We got ushered me into Thomas's room, which was even more dull and lifeless than the rest of the house. A queen-sized bed, one small cupboard, and a single wooden chair tucked in the corner. We needed